You know how people always say it was just an ordinary day before something big happens? Well, I never really thought much of it until that morning. I was in the shed as usual. Got a little workshop round the back of the house. Nothing fancy. Smells of sawdust, old tobacco and engine oil. My missus hates it, calls it my escape hatch. She's probably right. I was tinkering with an old clock, a proper pain in the arse mantelpiece thing I picked up at a boot sale. The sort of job you start just to put off doing the gardening. You know the type. Then the postie comes up the drive. He's late, but I don't mind. He's always late on a Tuesday. Probably stops off at Sandra's cafe for a fry-up. Can't blame him. Anyway, there's this envelope. No stamp. Looks official. Thick paper, like it's carrying bad news. You get to my age and you know a serious letter when you see one. I open it up and inside's a printed invite from some history society asking me to speak on Britain's last execution. They want me to talk about it. Me, like I'm some sort of expert on death. Now here's the thing. I've never told this story. Not properly. Oh, a few mates down the pub know bits and bobs. A few offhand comments over the years. But the full tale, nah, never seemed the right time. But today feels different. Maybe it's the way the world's gone, always looking back, digging up old ghosts. Or maybe I'm just an old sod who's finally ready to let it out. So, I'll tell you how it was, the last hanging in Britain. I wasn't the man who pulled the lever, mind you. That was Harry Allen. He was the governor. But I was there, close enough to see everything. Close enough that I still see it when I close my eyes. This isn't a story about monsters or heroes. It's about a job. A dirty job, sure, but a job nonetheless. And in those days, when the Home Office called, you didn't say no. You just got on with it. Funny, innit? They teach you everything at school, except how to tie a noose. I had to learn that from a bloke who used to deliver milk. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's wind the clock back, shall we? 1964, the year it all changed. That's when the phone rang. The call that would make me part of British history, whether I liked it or not. It was a Wednesday morning. I remember that clear as day because Wednesdays were the quiet ones. No deliveries, no appointments, just me, the kettle and the crossword in the Daily Mirror. A man's routine is sacred, you know. Phone rings. Now back then phones didn't ring for good news. If it wasn't the missus' sister waffling on about her bad back, it was work. And in my line of work wasn't the sort of thing you put on your CV. I pick up. Morning, I say, all casual, and it's Harry Allen. Now, Harry had a voice like gravel soaked in whiskey. Friendly enough, but when he called, you knew it was business. He didn't do chit-chat. Got a job for you, lad, he says. Double execution, Strangeways. Next week, that was it. Straight to the point. No frills, no pleasantries. He might as well have been asking if I could pop round to fix his leaky tap. Understood, I said, like I always did. It's not like you could say, sorry Harry, I'm washing me hair. He gave me the names, Gwynne Evans and Peter Allen. Said it real matter of fact, but you could tell there was a pause, just a half-second hesitation. That's when I knew this wasn't any old job. This was going to be the one, the last. The press had been sniffing around for weeks, talking about abolishing the death penalty. There were debates in Parliament, protests, bleeding hearts with their banners. But we were still on the books, Until someone changed the law, the Hangman's crew had work to do, and now it was us who'd be signing off the final chapter. After I put the phone down, I just sat there for a bit, staring at the wallpaper. It had this awful mustard colour, real 60s stuff. The kettle whistled, but I didn't move. It was strange. I'd done this job before, more times than I care to count, but this one felt heavier, like the air in the room had thickened. The missus came in, saw my face, and she knew straight away. "Another one?" she asked, arms folded. I just nodded. She didn't need to ask more. She never did. She didn't like what I did, but she understood. Back then, duty was duty. You didn't moan about it. So I finished my tea, folded up the mirror, and started packing my kit. Rope, measuring tape, chalk, the tools of the trade, all in a battered old suitcase that had seen too many prison walls. As I latched it shut, I remember thinking, this could be the last time I ever need this. But of course you don't dwell on that. You get on with it. That's what we were paid to do. Now you might be wondering how a bloke like me ends up in a line of work like that. It's not like you grow up thinking, I want to be a hangman's assistant when I'm older. Nah, you dream of being a footballer or driving steam trains. But life's funny. It's always got a different plan for you, whether you like it or not. See, my dad worked in the prisons, not as a screw, mind you, but as a maintenance man. Fixed everything from leaky taps to broken doors. He always said, son, it's honest work, but keep your mouth shut and you'll go far. Good advice, that. When I left school, there weren't many jobs going. This was post-war Britain. Grey skies, factories shutting down, and everyone still tightening their belts. So I followed Dad's footsteps, started out doing odd jobs at the Nick, repainting cells, fixing squeaky hinges, that sort of thing, nothing glamorous. It was there I met Harry Allen. He was already well into his career by then, taking over from Pierpoint, who was the hangman everyone knew by name. Harry wasn't like the stories you hear about executioners. He wasn't a grim reaper type. He was a pro, calm, methodical, treated it like any other trade. One day I got chatting with him in the prison yard. He was puffing on a woodbine watching me fix a drain pipe. He says, "You've got steady hands, lad. Ever thought of earning a few extra quid?" I thought he meant painting his front room or something. Turns out he meant assisting on an execution. Now that's not the sort of offer you rush home and tell your mum about. But the pay was good. 10 quid a job. That was a fair chunk back then. More than a week's wages for a couple of hours' work. First time I did it I was nervous as hell. Hands clammy, mouth dry. But Harry, he made it seem like clockwork. He taught me everything. Measuring the drop, checking the knot, reading the body language of the condemned. Our job, he'd say, is to make sure it's quick and clean. No mess, no fuss. He was right. It wasn't about being a cold bastard. It was about doing it right, so no one suffered more than they had to. But of course, you don't go around shouting about it. You don't walk into the Dog and Duck and say, "Guess what I did today, lads?" It was a job that lived in the shadows. Neighbours thought I was a caretaker or a warehouse man. Even my mates only knew I worked in the system, which could mean anything. And I liked it that way. No questions, no judgment. But there's a weight to secrets, you know. You carry them around and over time they sink into your bones. So when that phone rang for Strangeways, I knew. This wasn't just another job. This was the last page of a very old book, and I was about to help close it. You know how some crimes make the front page because they're shocking? Grisly murders, big scandals, stuff that has the old dears clutching their pearls. Yeah, this wasn't one of those. The killing of John Allen West didn't send shockwaves through the country. It didn't have the drama or the mystery. It was messy, stupid, and pointless. A robbery gone wrong. Two lads who thought they were gangsters, but they were nothing more than petty crooks with more mouth than brains. Gwynne Evans and Peter Allen, the last men to swing in Britain. Their names are in the history books now, but back then they were just two small-time thieves looking for their next payday. It was April '64. Evans and Allen decided to nick a car and drive up to Seaton in Cumbria. Their target, John Allen West, a laundry van driver. Why him? Pure chance. They thought he'd have a bit of cash lying around the house. That was it. No master plan, no big heist. Just two blokes with a kosh and a kitchen knife thinking they could make a quick quid. But it all went sideways. They broke into West's house expecting an easy job, but West was no pushover. He fought back. Good on him. But in the scuffle, they battered him, left him for dead in his own hallway. For what? A handful of coins and a watch. It was brutal, but it wasn't front page shocking. It was the kind of crime that happened in rough parts of every city back then. The sort of thing you'd hear in the pub and shake your head at, then go back to your pint. But here's where it gets interesting. The country was changing. Folk were starting to question things that had been set in stone for centuries. Capital punishment was on its way out. You could feel it. The politicians were arguing. The papers were full of opinions, and the protests outside prisons were getting louder. So when Evans and Allen got caught, and it didn't take long, they were idiots about covering their tracks. The powers that be had a decision to make. They could have let them rot in prison, but no, they chose to make an example of them. One last show of the old justice system before the tide turned. It wasn't really about Evans and Allen anymore. It was about politics. The death penalty was hanging by a thread, and someone wanted to remind the public that it was still law. So, while their crime didn't shock the nation, their sentence did. Me, I just saw two lads who made a stupid choice. But the machine was already in motion, and once it starts, you can't stop it. That's when I knew this job at Strangeways War was going to be unlike any other I'd done before. Strangeways. If you've never been, count yourself lucky. It's the sort of place where the walls don't just keep people in, they keep the light out. Big looming Victorian lump of a prison, plonked right in the heart of Manchester, like a bad memory no one can scrub out. I'd been there before, of course, plenty of times, but this visit had a different feel to it. You could sense it in the air. The screws were quieter. The governor had that tight-lipped look, like he'd been told to keep it dignified. And me, well, I just kept my head down, same as always. Harry and I arrived early, always did. You don't turn up late for a job like this. We met with the prison staff, went through the usual handshake nonsense, then got straight to it. There's a routine to these things, a ritual if you like. You don't deviate from it, not because of superstition, but because it's how you keep things clean. Precise, professional. First stop, the execution chamber. Now, Don't go picturing some dark, sinister dungeon. It's just a small whitewashed room with a set of gallows bolted to the floor, clean as a whistle, sterile, like an operating theatre, but with more ghosts. We unpacked the kit. The ropes were already measured and prepped. Harry had a habit of checking the drop lengths 3 times. No second chances, he'd say. He was right. If you cocked up the measurements, you'd either leave a man twitching or, God forbid, take his head clean off. Neither was acceptable. While Harry did his calculations, I handled the practical stuff. Chalk marks on the floor to line up the trapdoor. Test the lever, smooth and silent. I even gave the nooses a once-over, checking the coils, making sure the slip knot would tighten just right. It sounds cold, I know, but that was the job. You weren't there to pass judgment. You were there to make sure it was quick, clean and over before the man knew what hit him. Funny thing is, it's not the act of the hanging that gets you. It's the build-up, the silence in that room. As you go through the motions, you can hear your own heartbeat if you stop for a second. Once the setup's done, you don't stand around admiring your handiwork. You get out, leave the room as it should be, empty and waiting. Harry and I went to the staff room after. Cup of tea, no chit-chat. We just sat there, stirring our mugs, listening to the faint hum of the prison. The only sound was the occasional clang of a distant cell door. We didn't see Evans and Allen that day. That comes later. But you could feel their presence. 2 condemned men, sitting just down the corridor, probably thinking it was all still a bad dream. For us, though, it was just another day at the office. Only, deep down, we both knew this was the last time we'd ever set up the ropes. The ritual was done. Now it was just a waiting game. The first time you come face to face with a condemned man, you never forget it. It's not like in the films where they're all screaming and begging for mercy. Nah, most of them are quiet. Too quiet. Like their brains haven't caught up to where they are. You don't see fear, not straight away. You see confusion, like they're waiting for someone to jump out and tell them it's a mistake. That morning at Strangeways was no different. After we'd sorted the gallows, Harry gave me a nod. Time to meet Evans and Allen. Now we didn't do the talking, that was the governor's job. We just stood there, watched, observed. You're not there to make friends. You're there to get a feel. How they'll walk, if they'll need steadying, whether they'll go quietly or kick off. First up was Gwynne Evans. He was the cocky one, walked in with a half smirk on his face, like it was all some big joke. He had this bravado about him, you know, the kind of bloke who'd tell you he could knock out Cassius Clay with one hand, but deep down he's scared stiff. He clocked me straight away, gave me a little nod. "Morning, pal," he says, like we were queuing up for the chippy. I didn't respond. You don't. You keep it professional. But inside I was thinking, you're putting on a show for yourself, son. No one else. Then there was Peter Allen. Different story, that one. He shuffled in, eyes down, like a kid who's been caught nicking sweets. You could see the weight of it all pressing down on him. He was younger than Evans, and it showed. Looked lost, broken. He didn't say a word, just sat there wringing his hands, staring at a crack in the wall like it was his last hope. It's a strange feeling, standing there, watching 2 blokes who'll be dead in a few hours. You feel nothing, or at least you try to. You can't afford to feel much, otherwise it'll chew you up. But that morning, I'll admit, something tugged at me. Not sympathy, not really, more like a quiet sadness. These weren't hardened killers, they were fools, petty crooks who made a stupid choice and were now paying the ultimate price. But once the wheels are in motion, There's no stopping the machine. Harry did his thing, walked through the procedure with the governor, checked the paperwork, the timings. Me, I kept an eye on the lads, watched every twitch, every breath. You have to. It's all about preparation. If a man's likely to bolt or freeze up, you need to know. But there was no drama that day. Evans kept up his cocky front. Alan stayed silent. It was all subdued. The governor wrapped it up. We were done. As we left, I glanced back. Evans caught my eye and gave a little wink. Alan didn't move. That image stuck with me for years. Back in the staff room, Harry lit up a woodbine and muttered, "This job's nearly done, lad." And for the first time, I think he sounded relieved. The night before a hanging is strange. It's not frantic. There's no rush, no last-minute panics. Everything's already been done. The ropes are measured, the paperwork's signed, the clock's ticking. But the air, it's heavy. Like the whole place knows what's coming, and no one wants to mention it. That evening, Harry and I stayed in the officers' quarters. Basic digs, a bed, a kettle, and walls so thin you could hear a pin drop 3 doors down. But we weren't there for comfort. We had our tea in silence, couple of pork pies Harry had brought with him, 2 mugs of strong-as-hell brew. He sat at the table, rolling a cigarette, while I stared at the ceiling. The weight of it all, not just the job, but what it represented, was settling in. Harry wasn't a man for deep conversation. He was old school. But that night, as he lit his fag, he looked up and said, "This'll be the last one, lad." I didn't need to ask what he meant. We both knew. The writing was on the wall. The politicians had been faffing about with abolition for months, but after this, the tide was turning. "I don't mind, truth be told," he said, exhaling a slow puff of smoke. "I've done me bit. Never enjoyed it, but it's a job someone had to do. But I reckon it's time, don't you?" I just nodded. He leaned back in his chair, staring out the small window. "You know, they think we're monsters," he muttered. "Public don't understand. We don't choose who goes. We just make sure it's done right." That hit me. I'd always seen it as just a job. Same as being a butcher or a grave digger. You don't take pleasure in it, but someone's got to do it. But here was Harry, the governor himself, admitting that the end of the line was a relief. Later on, as we settled in for the night, the quiet really sank in. You don't sleep much before a hanging. You just lie there, listening. Every creak of the prison, every distant cough from a screw doing his rounds. You wonder what the condemned are thinking. Are they sleeping, praying? Are they clinging to some faint hope of a reprieve? But then you remember, no last-minute phone calls are coming. At some point, I must have dozed off, because next thing I knew, the morning bell rang. Early, brutal, execution day. Harry was already up, shirt buttoned, tie on, as if he hadn't slept at all. He looked at me and said, "Let's get this done, lad." No drama, no speeches, just a job to do. But I'll tell you this, walking down that corridor towards the gallows, knowing it was for the last time, that sticks with a man. People think it's all about the rope, but there's more to an executioner's toolkit than a bit of hemp and a lever. It's not glamorous, mind you, no polished oak boxes or velvet-lined cases. It all fits in a battered old suitcase, same one I used since my first job. It looked more like I was going on a weekend break than turning up to the gallows. First thing's the rope. Now this isn't your garden variety washing line. It's proper manila hemp, strong, coarse, stiffened up with a bit of wax so it holds the coil shape. Every noose is prepared to match the condemned's weight, height, neck size. You don't guess, you calculate. The perfect drop length is what makes the difference between a clean, quick end or a bloody mess. The slip knot, that's the business end, not just for show like you see in the movies. That knot's got to tighten instantly on impact. No hesitation. Harry always said a sloppy knot is the worst kind of cruelty. He was right. Next up, measuring tape. That's your most important tool, more than the rope itself. You measure everything. The trapdoor width, the beam height, the bloke's neck. You've got a little handbook with standard drop charts. But experience teaches you more than any manual. Then there's the chalk. We'd mark the exact spot where the condemned's feet would stand. You don't want them shuffling off centre. Everything's about precision. A half-inch off can ruin everything. The hood? Simple black cloth bag. It's not there for drama, it's there to keep things dignified. For the family, for the press, for the man himself. No one needs to see a face in those final seconds. There's a small leather strap too. Goes around the ankles. Stops any kicking once the drop happens. That's not about cruelty, it's about efficiency. People don't realise, but the body's got a mind of its own after the neck breaks. And of course the lever, that old iron handle, fixed to the side of the gallows. Simple as it gets. You pull, the trapdoor drops, gravity does the rest. No electronics, no fail-safes, just a man and a machine. Setting up was a ritual. You laid out each item in order, checked them twice, sometimes 3 times. Harry always said, preparation's the difference between a clean job and a bloody headline. I took pride in that part, I won't lie, not in the death itself, but in knowing it was done right. Clinical, quick, dignified. People think we were butchers, but a butcher takes a cleaver and hacks away. We were craftsmen, precision workers. You didn't want to cause suffering, you wanted it over before they knew it. That morning at Strangeways, laying out the toolkit, there was this feeling. Not nerves, more like finality. Like packing up the tools for the last job on a building site. Harry gave me a look as we finished up. Last time we'll do this, lad. I didn't say anything back. Didn't need to. The toolkit was ready. Now, it was down to the clock. A double hanging's a rare thing. It's not like we kept a 2-for-1 special on the go. Most of the time, executions were done one at a time. Cleaner that way, less chance of anything going wrong. But when the powers that be want to make a statement, well, they line 'em up. Evans and Allen were to be hanged simultaneously. 2 ropes, 2 trapdoors, 2 lives snuffed out in sync. Now here's where the job steps up a notch. A single execution's a precision job. A double, that's a dance. Every step's got to be rehearsed, every man in place. If you're off by a second, the whole thing turns into a cock-up. And believe me, the last thing you want is to be remembered as the crew that botched the final hanging in Britain. Harry was in charge of Evans. I was to assist with Alan. We ran through it the night before, just the two of us, pacing it out in the gallows room. No bodies, just empty rope and chalk marks, like rehearsing for a play no one wants to watch. The plan was simple. Evans and Alan would be brought in together, but we'd split them at the last few paces. 2 teams, 2 ropes. Harry would give the nod. On that cue, we'd fit the hoods, secure the nooses, ankle straps on, final checks, then down they'd go. But here's the thing, no matter how much you rehearse, people are unpredictable, especially when they're facing the end. We didn't know if one of them might panic, or worse, if one would try to bolt and the other would freeze. You've got to be ready for both. So Harry pulls me aside and says, "If I give you the word, you take over." That meant, if anything went wrong, I'd step in, cover the gap. That's the thing with this job. There's no room for error. You don't get a second chance to fix a mistake once that lever's pulled. Execution morning, the routine was the same, but everything felt heavier, like time was dragging its feet on purpose. When the cell doors opened, you could feel the tension ripple through the corridor. Evans was still playing the hard man, chin up, giving it the bravado. Alan? He looked like a man who'd already left his body. As they were led down, the air felt thick. Even the screws were quieter than usual, walking like they didn't want their footsteps to echo. We split them at the gallows entrance. Evans went with Harry. I stayed with Alan. Now Alan was trembling, not violently, but a soft, constant shake, like his body had given up pretending it was brave. I stood close to him, not saying a word, but ready in case his knees buckled. I wouldn't have judged him if they did. Harry gave me the look, that tiny nod. That was the cue. We stepped into position. No words, just action. Hood over, noose fitted, hands steady, heart racing, but buried deep down where no one could see it. Ankle straps done, quick, smooth. I looked across to Harry. He had Evans all sorted. The man was standing there like he was waiting for a bus. Then Harry spoke, calm and clear. "Proceed." That was the moment. 2 ropes, 2 lives, hanging in that pause between breath and nothingness. Harry pulled the lever. The trapdoors clapped open like thunder. And just like that, it was done. No cries, no struggle, just the finality of 2 bodies suspended in silence. Double duty. 2 ropes, 2 lives, 1 last job. Execution mornings move slow. You're up before the sun, but time drags its feet. The prison's awake, but it feels like everyone's whispering. Even the clank of keys seems softer, like the walls themselves are holding their breath. Harry and I had already been to the gallows that morning. One last check, ropes were spot on, trapdoors swung clean, everything ready. The toolkit was packed away. No distractions, no mistakes. Then we waited. Now, while we were having our tea in the staff room, the chaplain was down with Evans and Alan. That was their time. Last prayers, final words if they had any. It wasn't a big ceremony, no singing choirs or fire and brimstone sermons, just a quiet man in a dark suit offering them a bit of peace before the inevitable. I never asked what was said in those moments. It wasn't my place, but you could tell when a man had made his peace and when he hadn't. Some came out calm, others You could see the weight still hanging on them before the rope did. About 15 minutes before the drop, the bell rang. That was it. Harry looked at me, didn't need to say a word. We both stood, adjusted our ties, straightened our jackets. You don't march to the gallows, you walk steady, controlled. It's not about bravado, it's about respect for the job, for what's about to happen. The corridor to the condemned cells is always the longest walk, no matter how many times you've done it. You feel every step in your gut. When we got there, Evans and Alan were already standing by the door, flanked by warders. Evans was keeping up his act, a smirk playing on his lips, but his eyes, they weren't smirking. Alan looked hollow, like he'd already left his own skin. The chaplain was there, Bible in hand, murmuring a few quiet words. He didn't come with us to the gallows. His part was done. He gave each of them a nod, and then it was over. No last-minute pardons, no dramatic speeches, just a nod from the governor and a quiet "proceed." That's when the machine kicks in. You fall into rhythm. Evans and Alan were led down the corridor, side by side. The warders held their arms, not rough, just firm. The corridor walls seemed to close in with every step. When we reached the gallows room, we split them apart. Evans went with Harry. I took Alan. The room felt colder, smaller. You can feel a man's heartbeat through his shoulder when you're standing that close. We moved fast but calm. Hood over, noose placed, the strap around the ankles, every move precise, like clock hands ticking towards the hour. Harry gave me the look. This was it. The governor read the official words, cold, legal, the final stamp of a system that had run its course. Harry's hand rested on the lever. My breath sat heavy in my chest. And then he pulled. The trapdoors dropped. 2 lives ended, and silence filled the space where they had been. That was 0 hour. Everything we'd rehearsed, everything we'd prepared for, done in less than a breath. There's a moment, right after the drop, when everything stops. No sound, no movement, like the whole world's taken a breath and isn't sure it wants to let it out again. You've done the job. The trapdoors have snapped open. The ropes have done their work. But for a few seconds, it's as if time itself just hangs there. You don't think about the mechanics, the paperwork, or the faces watching from behind the glass. You just stand there, still, silent. It's not like the movies, you know. There's no shouting, no dramatic music building up. It's clinical, efficient, but it still hits you. 2 men, alive 1 second, gone the next. Evans went quick. His bravado didn't follow him through the trapdoor. The rope did its job cleanly. Alan, he was the same. No drama, just gone. The only sound was the creak of the rope settling and the faint metallic clatter of the trapdoor swinging back into place. Harry always told me, if you hear screaming, you've failed. That morning, we didn't fail. Everything went to plan, clean, quiet. But that silence, it stays with you. I remember standing there, eyes forward, hands by my side, and it felt like the walls were holding their breath too. Even the screws were frozen in place. The whole room wrapped in that moment. It's not pride you feel, not relief. It's hard to explain. It's like your body knows something significant just happened, but your brain hasn't caught up yet. You feel heavy, like the air's pressing down on your shoulders. Harry broke the silence first, just a quiet, right. That was it. One word, and we were back into routine. We didn't linger. You don't stare. You don't gawk. You do what needs to be done. Time of death recorded. Signatures. Forms. It's all very matter of fact. The paperwork's got no space for emotions, but I'll tell you what I do remember, as clear as day. After we left the gallows room, walking back down that long corridor, the sound of our footsteps echoed differently, hollow, like the walls knew we'd just been part of something final. Harry didn't say much on the way back. Neither did I. There wasn't anything left to say. The job was done. The last hanging in Britain was over, and the world, it just kept on turning. You'd think after something like that, pulling the lever on the last hanging in Britain, there'd be some sort of big moment, a pause to reflect, maybe a few words said. Nah, you finish the job, you go and do the paperwork. Harry and I left the gallows, walked that same long corridor back to the staff room. Didn't say much on the way. There's not a lot to say after you've just ended 2 lives. You just go through the motions. The staff room was as dull as ever. Same chipped table, same wobbly chairs, kettle whistling away like nothing had happened. The warders brought in the forms. Officials from the Home Office always made sure the paperwork was ready before the trapdoor even dropped. Efficiency, you see. Harry sat down, pulled out his pen and started scribbling. Time of death, 8 a.m. sharp. Names, signatures, every box ticked. It's funny, really. You've just done the most final thing you can do to a human being, and now you're filling out forms like you're renewing a driving license. Me, I was in charge of the witness sheets, names of everyone who was in that room, the governor, the chaplain, the doctor who'd confirmed what we already knew, all logged, all official. It's a cold process, but it has to be. Keeps it all above board. While we were at it, the warder comes in with a tray, 2 mugs of tea, couple of digestive biscuits tossed on a plate, like it was any other work day. Harry picked up his mug, gave me a look and said deadpan, "Well, that's that, lad. Last one for the history books." Then he dunked his biscuit and carried on as if we'd just fixed a leaky tap. And that's how it was. No fanfare, no speech about justice, just 2 men quietly sipping tea, finishing off the admin. It's the British way, isn't it? End of an era, best have a brew. We didn't go back to the gallows after that. That part of the job was handed over to the prison staff. They'd do the cutting down, the transfer to the mortuary, all by the book. We didn't hang around, literally or figuratively. Once the forms were signed and the tea was gone, it was time to leave. Walking out of Strangeways that morning, the world felt normal. Birds were singing, people were off to work, buses were running late, business as usual. But in my head, I knew we'd just closed a chapter, the last hanging, and it had ended not with a bang, but with a biscuit. You'd think being part of something as final as the last hanging in Britain would leave a mark on the world, wouldn't you? Truth is, it didn't, not really. The day after, life just carried on. Headlines about the execution popped up in the papers, sure. Bit of a stir on the radio. The usual arguments, half the country saying good riddance, the other half saying it's barbaric and outdated. But by the end of the week, folk were back to worrying about the price of bread and when England were playing next. As for me and Harry, we packed up the toolkit, same as always, and went our separate ways. No speeches, no handshakes, no thanks for a job well done, just, "See you around, lad." That was the last time I worked as a hangman's assistant. The last time anyone did, for that matter. The following year, 1965, they suspended the death penalty for murder, turned it into a 5-year trial run, but everyone knew it was permanent. It was the end of the line for people like me. I never missed it, mind you. You don't get sentimental about a job like that. It's not something you hang your hat on. But it's a strange feeling when your line of work disappears overnight. One day you're essential, the next you're redundant. History moves fast when it wants to. A few of the old boys struggled with it. Harry took it in his stride. He was ready to hang up his noose, so to speak. Some of the others weren't. They'd built their identities around it. Being the hangman was who they were. Me, I went back to odd jobs. Bit of maintenance here, bit of warehouse work there. No one knew, no one asked. That was the thing. You couldn't exactly pop executioner's assistant on your CV, could you? So you just kept your mouth shut and got on with life. Years passed and the world changed. The death penalty got officially abolished in 1969. By then, no one was ringing us up. We were relics of a system people wanted to forget. But I never forgot. Every now and then, when I'd be in the shed, tidying up, I'd come across that old suitcase. The one with the tape, the chalk, the straps. Never got rid of it. Couldn't tell you why. Maybe because it was the last reminder of a job I never chose, but did anyway. Funnily enough, no one ever asked me about it. Not really. Friends, family, they knew I worked in the service, but we never talked details. It wasn't like nowadays, where everyone wants to share every detail of their lives on the telly. We just cracked on. The world moved on without us, and we let it. People always ask the same question when they find out what I did. Does it haunt you? I know what they're picturing, faces in the dark, nightmares of rope burns and last words echoing round me head. But it's not like that, not at all. I don't see Evans and Allen when I close my eyes. Their faces faded years ago. The details blur. What they wore, the looks on their faces, that's not what sticks. What stays with you is the silence. It's hard to explain to someone who's never been there, but there's a moment after the drop when everything just stops. You've done your job, the room's empty except for you and the rope, and it's silent. Not peaceful, not eerie, just hollow. That's what you carry with you, the cold efficiency of it all. You spend months hearing debates on the wireless, reading headlines, listening to folks argue about justice and punishment. Then you walk into a room, pull a lever, sign a form, and it's done. That's it. The system moves on, but you're left standing there with that silence ringing in your ears. I've never been haunted by the men we hanged. What haunts me is how ordinary it all felt. You're taught from a young age that life is precious, sacred, but when you've seen how quick it can be snuffed out, how life can be boiled down to a set of measurements and a job well done, it changes how you see the world. I don't say that to sound cold. I'm not heartless. But when you're part of a system designed to take life away in such a clean, clinical fashion, it makes you question where the humanity is in all of it. Sometimes, when I'm in the shed late at night, tinkering with some old bit of junk, I catch myself going through the motions in my head, lining up the chalk marks, checking the knots, all muscle memory. It's not guilt, It's just what's left behind when a job becomes a part of you. But no, I'm not haunted the way people think. It's not the faces, it's not the bodies, it's the silence. So here I am, an old man, sitting in his shed, telling stories that most folk don't want to hear. The world's changed a lot since that morning at Strangeways. The death penalty's gone. Good riddance too. Doesn't mean justice is perfect now, far from it, but at least we're not pretending that a rope solves anything. Sometimes I see debates pop up again, people shouting for the rope to come back, usually after some horrible crime makes the news. They talk about justice, closure, an eye for an eye, and I get it, I do. It's easy to call for the noose when you've never seen what it does. But me, I've seen it. I've felt the weight of that silence after the lever's been pulled. Trust me, it's not something you want to bring back. I'm not ashamed of the job I did. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't personal. It was a role that needed doing, and I made sure it was done right. No mistakes, no suffering, just as quick and clean as it could be. But I'm glad it ended with us. The last hanging, the last lever pulled, the last entry in the ledger. It's a strange thing knowing you were part of history. Stranger still when you realize most people have no idea who you are. And that's fine by me. This isn't a tale for glory, it's just what happened. Now I spend my days fixing clocks, pottering about, and watching the world argue about things they think are new but aren't. Different faces, same old debates. Sometimes young lads come round asking questions, university types, writing papers on capital punishment. They expect to hear some dark, grisly tale. I just make them a brew, sit them down and tell them the truth. It was a job, one I'm glad no one has to do anymore. So, that's my story, the last hanging in Britain. And now, if you don't mind, I'm going to finish my tea, head back into the shed and fix that bloody mantel clock that's been ticking at me for weeks. Funny, isn't it? You spend your youth tightening ropes, and in your old age you spend it winding springs. The world moves on, and so do we.